Hey folks, I'm Sir Glory and welcome to my 16th Anatomy of a Battle video for Steel Division Normandy 44. This is a 1v1 ranked battle, this time between the 15th Infantry Division and Panzer-Lehr on the Odon map. So I was quite happy to see I was fighting an armoured division in this map. The right hand side isn't really suitable for tanks because of the lack of good roads and there being plenty of positions for anti-tank guns. So I thought that the German might rush to take the town and then push his armour forward from there. Or he might make his main attack down the left flank and use the two tree lines in my portion of the map to cover his advance and use as staging points. So I decided that my best option was to take the town and from there get control of the centre and the right flank. I'd send an anti-tank gun to cover the right flank just in case, and a small force to watch the left and delay any advance there. My starting forces this time were 3 rifle squads, a recce section, a 6-pounder anti-tank gun, a dingo command car and a 2-inch mortar carrier that headed into the town, with a rifle squad and a recce section and a 6-pounder split off on either flank. And it turned out that we were both charging into the town along this main road and spotted each other at distance. German Kübelwagen machine gun engaged my infantry truck, and then the 6-pounder anti-tank gun and a Pak 38 engaged my mortar carrier. But my 6-pounder dismounted and destroyed the Kübelwagen, and then it took out one of the 2 half-tracks and targeted the third. Didn't manage to destroy the third one, but did manage to damage it, damaging its transmission and forcing it to fall back. I'm very happy with the outcome there. I managed to get all of my units into position without taking casualties. The rifle squads are pushed forward in the town with the dingo command car providing support. The 6-pounder has good vision along the road and have recce sections advanced out on either flank, so it's a good start all in all for me. But it's a different story over on the left, where my forces there run into a strong German column. My recce carrier engages an Aufklärer Kübelwagen, and then my rifle squad dismounts to fire on the recce troops. My 6-pounder also dismounts and takes out the Kübelwagen, but then receives fire from multiple vehicles and is pinned down. My recce carrier was forced to surrender, and the 6-pounder was destroyed shortly afterwards by concentrated fire, and my rifle squad was left isolated. I tried to get it to fall back, but it was pinned down in the open, and then it was targeted by everything. So the only positive here on the left is that all the German units halted to fire on my rifle squad, which ended up buying me some time. So it looks like the German has ignored the right flank completely. I have the advantage in the town and he has it on the left, so it's now going to be about who exploits the advantage best. I'm pushing my rifle squads forward through the town to take control of it before the German can bring in more troops, and the Pak 38 is pulling back along the road under machine gun fire from the recce section carrier, and I start dropping fire from my mortar on it as well. As we move up, we spot an MG42 moving forward, and we've pinned an Aufklärer section as well. And fire from the mortar takes out the MG42, and the recce carrier and a rifle squad finish off the Aufklärer. And when they go down, then the way's clear for us to advance further. So my rifle squads are in complete control of the town now, and they're engaging the Pak 38, which is pinned in the open, and my recce carrier on the left flank adds fire to it and destroys the Pak. My first reinforcements have arrived over on the left, unsurprisingly. I've brought in for now a rifle squad and an Avre, and I decide to have them jump off from the main road here and move cross country so that they're screened by the village over on the other side of the orchard there. And I've got some more rifle squads on the way in. The Germans, they seem to be advancing up towards the tree line that's up beyond the village. But the town have decided to keep the pressure on, and I push towards the next group of buildings. And we detect another MG42 and hammer it with fire from both recce carriers, my mortar and 2 rifle sections, while the 3rd rifle section rushes towards its position. and as soon as the machine gun's pinned, I move the rest of my rifles up to make sure we can take it out. It now looks like I'm going to be able to dominate the centre and the right of the map. I'm shifting my 6-pounder from the right flank in towards the town, and the 6-pounder from the town out to the left, where I've more infantry arriving now. I begin moving my mortar carrier forward when the MG42 recovers its morale, and it flees the burning building right into line of sight of my mortar and one of the infantry squads. So it's pinned again and it's quickly destroyed. I've now pushed well forward, and I'm opposed only by the SDKFZ that was hit by my 6-pounder right at the start of the battle. I tried to get a rifle squad into cover in a building, but as it moved up it's pinned by the half-track. I've got my dingo moving up though, and its command support is able to unpin the squad eventually.
Enemy spotted. Be ready.
But the half-track fires on this second squad that's moving up, and that one is pinned in turn. But the first squad's able to move up into the building and beyond the road. In the absence of any anti-tank units, I decided to get the mortar to begin shelling the half-track, and it manages to force it to fall back. On the left, the Germans haven't pushed beyond the tree line, and the 6-pounder had moved out from the town targets their stationary half-tracks. So it takes the first one out with a single shot, and then it targets the second one and forces it to fall back before destroying it. German reinforcements are now moving in towards the town, including what looks like a couple of Gepard anti-aircraft guns. The Gepards engage my recce carrier on the left, and the half-track recovers its morale and fires on a rifle section that had been pushing forward to the right. And the 6-pounder that started off covering the right flank's moving forward, but it'll be a while yet before it gets into position to help. But I now have a defence line set up on the left with a Churchill 5 on the way in to support the infantry and the Avro, and my 2 Star 6-pounders in a position to hit any armour that might move up on that flank. I'm still short of any sort of anti-tank in the town though, and I'm struggling to deal with the German vehicles there. My dingo has been pinned down and my infantry are taking heavy fire, so I have my mortar smoke off the half-track. The Gepards keep up the fire on my recce carrier though, forcing it to retreat. On the left hand side I can see a half-track sitting this side of the trees, so I move the Avro forward to target it, and it's able to take it out with a high explosive shot. And with that out the way I start pushing my rifle squads forward from the village, but they don't get very far before they're engaged by a couple of MG42s in the tree line. But the Avro is there for a reason, and I move it forward and it does its job, and it's able to suppress both of the MG42s with a one shot. But the German had a couple of Pak 38s in the area, so I pull the Avro back into cover so I can try to deal with them one at a time. The tank survives a couple of shots as it withdraws, so it gets into cover. A German half-track that's moving up, spotted by my 6-pounder at the town, and it's taken out. And after taking out that half-track, the gun continues moving into position where it could be ready to fire on the other half-track that was with a damaged transmission. The smoke clears a bit too early though, and the gun begins to take machine gun fire, but it's able to get the shot off and destroy the half-track. Back over on the left, the machine guns open up again on my infantry, but I've now got a Churchill 5 in hand, and that takes out one of the machine guns. The half-track then appears pushing forward on the extreme flank, and the Churchill begins to fire on that.
We can't take it anymore.
And one of the MG42s manages to recover suppression, and again engages my infantry. The Pak 38s had moved forward into line of sight on the Avro and fire on it, but both of them miss. So the Avro returns fire, and the fire is quite devastating, taking out both Paks at once. In the town, my troops are now taking fire from a SPA troop section and a couple of half-tracks. The Gepards are also moving forward again and open up with some serious fire, and unfortunately both my 6-pounder and my Dingo have been pinned down. On the left, the Churchill continues to fire in the half-track while the Avra moves forward to get line of sight on the MG42 in the trees, and once it gets into position it knocks the MG out quickly and I can begin my advance again. The Gepards have eliminated one of my squads, but as they're open talk vehicles and they're all closely grouped, I have my mortar start shelling them to try and force them to fall back, and the 6-pounder gets a shot off at them, but it's then pinned by sustained fire from one of the Gepards. And then over on the left, the half-track that was routed by the Churchill is spotted by my 6-pounder and taken out. With the Gepards having fallen back, a half-track and SPA troop section are now engaging my infantry to the left of the road, but I've got the Honey Stewart back by the crossroads that fires on them. The SPA troop are pinned and the half-track heads for cover. But the Gepards and the half-track are still shooting into the infantry up in the forest. I'm moving up on the left though, and I still suspect that there are Panzer Grenadiers in the trees, so I keep my tanks at a safe distance while the infantry moves up. And then right on cue, 2 Panzer Grenadier squads appear and open up in one of my squads, but they really should have kept their heads down as my tanks make short work of them. One of the Gepards continues to pour fire into my infantry in the town, so I bring in a Typhoon to make a rocket attack on it. The attack only manages to drive it back, but it takes the pressure off my infantry for a bit. And I've moved the Honey Stewart further forward and it re-engages the half-track. My rifle squads keep the fire on the SPA troop and eventually are able to take them out. And now, with them gone, and with the vision from my 2 recce sections, I'm pretty sure that the 4 vehicles I can see are all that the German has left on this flank. With my Honey Stewart, my 6-pounder and a Churchill I'm bringing in, I'm fairly confident I'll be able to hold my position here for a while. I'm really surprised to see how quickly the tide has turned on the left. I'd expected once I'd cleared out the half-tracks and infantry I'd run into German armour, but I've a clear run up to the village. I've also beaten back his counter-attack at the town, where my mortar fire proved effective against his open-top vehicles. I've moved the Honey Stewart further up again to the left of the village, where it can engage the German vehicles. So it gets into position where it can engage the half-track and gets a couple of shots off on that, and the half-track then pulls back towards one of the Gepards. The Honey Stewart's now targeting the Gepard and it gets a couple of bounces on that before forcing it to withdraw. Over in the left flank, my riflemen are just about in position in the trees, while my tanks and my 6-pounder continue to move into position. We spot a half-track over by the farm, and that's followed quickly after by spotting our first German armour, 2 Jagdpanzer IVs. So my Churchill, which is further back, engages the half-track and shoots a couple of rounds at it, but I don't like it being in that exposed position, so I order it to move closer to the trees. I'm hoping that if I can draw the Jagdpanzers forward, my 6-pounder will be able to shoot into their side armour. So things are looking okay over on the left, and over on the right, the Honey Stewart's been firing at the Gepard for about the last minute or so, and it's had a few bounces on it. It then targets the half-track again, and is able to take that out. It then resumes firing on the Gepard, and it finally manages to get that as well. It then moves up and engages the second Gepard, and I now have a Churchill 4 in the village keeping watch along the main road. The 2 Jagdpanzers by the farm are holding position, which is a bit of a pain, but I've now brought in a 17-pounder and that gives me another option for dealing with them. I'm expecting there to be German airstrikes at any time, so I ready a couple of Mark 9 Spitfires. Overall I'm happy with my positions on the right and we'll just try to hold there, and my plan now is to reinforce the left where I know that there is more German armour heading in. We get some glimpses of tanks coming down the rail tracks there. We've spotted more German reinforcements coming in the main road towards the town, and my Churchill moves out to engage a half-track, but it pulls off the road out of the tank's line of sight. It then goes into a field and dismounts a Pak 40, which immediately begins to fire on my Honey Stuart. So the Stuart is returning fire, but I know that it's a losing battle, so I try to pull the tank back and let my artillery deal with the Pak, but it doesn't quite make it. On the left, the Jagdpanzers have been joined by a Panzer IV command tank, but they continue to hold position at the farm. That suits me, as I'm happy to hold what I have right now. I do have the advantage in map control. But the German then begins to push the half-track in the far left forward, maybe trying to check and see if my tanks were still behind the trees there. But I've brought in a Typhoon to hit his Jagdpanzers, and it forces them and the Panzer IV to fall back. And my Churchill 5 then forces the half-track to fall back, but annoyingly my 6-pounder also engages the half-track and is able to take it out. And I just hope that the German commander didn't spot where the shots come from, because I'm hoping that the anti-tank gun would stay hidden. I've brought up a Churchill artillery observer and have it call in a barrage on the Pak 40's position. There are another couple of half-tracks that I've spotted moving in, and it looks like I might get lucky and catch them in the barrage. My Churchill 4 fires on the newly arrived half-track and gets a bounce on it, which forces it to fall back. The half-track retreats right into the fire zone for my off-map artillery and stops. But it doesn't stop for long.
Enemy spotted.
It's lucky to actually get out of there alive. The Germans had just brought in a second Pak 40 there too. It survived, but the first Pak 40 was destroyed.
Enemy spotted. Be ready.
Over on the left, one of the Jagdpanzers has recovered morale from the Typhoon strike, and it begins to push forward on its own. And it pays the price for that when my 6-pounder in the trees takes it out. It looked like the Germans might be pushing some units forward on the far right flank, so I send one of my rifle squads over to the buildings on the right just to keep an eye out there. It might just have been the retreating half-track recovering its morale that made the front line marker move, but I don't want to take any chances. But the Germans are definitely pushing on the left, with the Panzer IV and the Jagdpanzer advancing. And my 17-pounder opens up in the Panzer IV and scores a track break with its second shot. And it's then able to destroy the Panzer with its third. The Jagdpanzer spotted my Avra though and opens up on it, getting a bounce and knocking the driver out. It gets a bounce with its second shot too, and as I tried to get the tank into cover, a third shot hits and destroys its engine. I've moved my 17-pounder to get line of sight in the Jagdpanzer, and it gets a hit on it, but doesn't do any damage. And the Jagdpanzer then finishes the job on the Avra. So the 17-pounder continues to fire and gets a couple of hits on the Jagdpanzer and forces it to fall back. And with that being done, I reposition my 17-pounder so as to avoid any artillery barrage that might be heading its way. I now have another 3 rifle squads and a couple of Wolverines moving up along with a recce section. I plan to send them to occupy the village on the left flank, as I want more anti-tank capability there.
Be careful. Enemies nearby.
You can see that the German armour still moving around there. So that's another Panzer IV moving into position by the farm, and it's engaged by my 17-pounder. The gun does score a couple of hits, but doesn't do any real damage on the tank. But the Jagdpanzer now has line of sight in the gun and lays fire on it, and the AT gun returns a compliment. But 17 pounders now under fire from both the Jagdpanzer and the Panzer IV. It does continue to shoot, and it gets a couple of bounces in the Jagdpanzer before the anti-tank gun's finally suppressed. I have my Wolverines covering the road as my trucks race towards the village, and I get glimpses of more German armour moving up. One of the tank hunters trades shots with a Panzer IV, and the Wolverines eventually forced to fall back. Survives a direct hit, but then its morale breaks with the next shot, which is a near miss. But the second Wolverine is able to send the Panzer IV into retreat. So a lot of action on the left, but it's been too quiet on the right flank. It turned out there was nothing moving up on the right, and I haven't spotted anything coming in on the main road either. The Pank 40 seems to be on its own to the right of the road, so I think the German might be building up forces in the cover of the trees behind the Gepard, and I decide to call in an off-map barrage in that area and move my spotter forward. I also move one of my mortars to get into range of the Pank 40. On the left, I'd moved my 6-pounder out from the trees to get line of sight on the Panzer IV by the farm, and it's able to take it out. But I've misclicked with an order for the Churchill 5, and it drives around the tree line right into line of sight of the Jagdpanzer. I did this in a previous battle, exactly the same thing, and it's got exactly the same results. But my infantry reinforcements and one of the Wolverines are now in position in the village, and the second Wolverine is moving in, so I've got that route well covered. And with the number of vehicles I've destroyed, I don't think he has enough left to be able to push a column of tanks past that position. I can't believe the Germans have got nothing in the right apart from a Pank 40 and the Gepard, but I've taken out so much armour on the left it's possible he sunk most of his points in there, and I get a glimpse of another couple of panzers moving along the rail tracks. So I'm beginning to think that there might be nothing on the right. Don't want to trust to luck though. So the Jagdpanzer's pushing forward again on the left, and I bring in Typhoon to hit it, even though the 6-pounder's probably in range. I just wanted to use the plane. And at the same time, one of the Panzer IVs on the road comes into line of sight of my Wolverine, and it's destroyed. The retreating Jagdpanzer is then engaged by my 6-pounder, which hits it and causes the crew to bail out. And then at its leisure it's able to destroy the Jagdpanzer. Another Panzer IV follows up and gets a good shot off at my 6-pounder, but the 6-pounder's first shot knocks out the tank's gunner, and the second shot blows up the tank.
One more kill.
And yet another Panzer IV moves along the railway line, and it's engaged again by my 6-pounder. And again the gunner's knocked out by the first shot, and the second shot takes out that tank as well.
One more kill.
It's now about time for the Phase C reinforcements to arrive, and I'm expecting to see some Tigers coming in, but at the moment it looks like that's the last of the German units on the left dealt with, and I'm still thinking there must be some units over here on the right. And I expect that if he's going to push on the right, he's going to have to do it now. So as a preemptive measure, I have both my mortars target the Pank 40 and call in an off-map barrage in the area around the Gepard. So as one of the mortar carriers moves up into range, the other one is able to take out the Pank 40. And the off-map barrage comes in and hammers the area around about that forest. But I'm surprised that the frontline marker doesn't actually move that much after the Gepard's morale. But when I looked at the neutral view, it showed that the German really didn't have any more units left. We do eventually see a Tiger appear in the distance, but for now there's just a half track and a Panzer IV on the left hand side, and they have brought in a Challenger and a Churchill 7 command tank, and they're able to engage the half track and take it out. So the battle ended up being pretty straightforward. Looking back at the replay, I realised that there wasn't a single German artillery barrage or airstrike. All that my anti-tank guns were targeted with was direct fire from his armour and other vehicles, so they had a pretty easy time of it. And for the most part I was able to pick off his tanks and tank hunters one at a time, which helped too. It also seemed that my opponent fell into the trap that I often end up in myself, and became obsessed with trying to push ahead with a plan that's not going to succeed. In his case, he kept bringing in more and more armour on the left flank where he'd clearly meant to push all along, and he sort of neglected to reinforce other areas to any real degree. So thanks for watching, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please leave me a comment and rate the video for me, and if you enjoy the content then please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you again next time. Cheers.